In December 2024, during the announcement of the appointment of a new U.S. ambassador to Denmark, U.S. President Donald Trump stated that the U.S. wants to own and control Greenland, the world's largest island and one of the richest places on Earth in natural resources. This statement may have shocked many people, but it was not the first time for Trump in this context. Trump had previously considered buying Greenland from Denmark during his first presidential term, but Denmark refused and mocked him, leading to a dispute with the Danish government at the time. Why has Trump returned to propose the same idea despite its previous rejection? This is an important question, but there are even more significant and broader questions, such as, why does Trump want to buy this particular island? What is the importance of this island to him or the United States? Why is this island not for sale, and if it were, what could its price be? The most pressing question is, why is Greenland a point of competition between China and the United States, and how could this island play a pivotal role in the upcoming global conflict in the Arctic? This is part of what we will chat about in today's episode. Former U.S. President Donald Trump was supposed to visit Denmark on September 2, 2019, in response to an invitation from Queen Margrethe II. However, about 2 weeks before the visit, specifically on August 21, 2019, Trump decided to cancel the visit. On that day, Trump tweeted on his X, formerly Twitter, account, saying that since the Danish Prime Minister was not interested in discussing the possibility of purchasing Greenland, he would postpone the meeting with her to another time. At that time, Trump was very upset with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, not because she refused to discuss the idea of selling Greenland to the U.S., but because she said that Trump's idea was absurd, which deeply offended him. Therefore, on the same day he announced the cancellation of the visit, journalists asked Trump before he boarded Marine One whether he canceled his visit to Denmark because they did not want to sell Greenland to him. Trump said, "No, that's not the reason. I was looking forward to visiting Denmark, but the Danish Prime Minister's statement that my idea was absurd was a nasty and inappropriate comment. She could have simply said, no, we're not interested in selling Greenland, or no, we don't want to sell, or we're not willing to discuss this matter at all, but she shouldn't have said that it's an absurd idea." In the same context, Trump told journalists that the idea of purchasing Greenland was not new and had been discussed for many years. He added that President Harry Truman had considered it before. At this point, we must pause and ask a few questions. Why was Trump asking Denmark to sell Greenland, given that the island has its own government he could negotiate with? What is Denmark's connection to Greenland? And did Harry Truman actually want to buy Greenland as Trump claimed? To answer these two questions, we need to go back in time to April 1940, during World War II, when Nazi Germany invaded Danish territory. Denmark fell into German hands within hours and declared its surrender. In light of this swift surrender, the fate of Danish colonies, such as Greenland, which the Danes had controlled for over 2 centuries, became uncertain, especially since the Germans did not seek to occupy Greenland. A year after Germany's occupation of Denmark, specifically in April 1941, the Danish ambassador to Washington, Henrik Kaufmann, independently signed an agreement with the Americans allowing the U.S. military to defend Greenland and establish a military presence there. This agreement was rejected by the Danish government at the time, which deemed it invalid and accused its ambassador in Washington of treason. However, this did not prevent the United States from establishing its military presence on the island. After the end of World War II, with the Allies led by the United States victorious and the Axis powers led by Germany defeated, the Danes began trying to renegotiate the defense agreement over Greenland with the U.S. because they were very displeased with it. The agreement had granted the U.S. significant military rights and privileges, and its termination terms were unclear. In December 1946, Danish Foreign Minister Gustav Rasmussen visited Washington and met with U.S. Secretary of State James Burns, informing him that the Danish government wanted to start negotiations with the U.S. to end the 1941 defense agreement. Secretary Burns consulted U.S. President Harry Truman and then returned to the Danish foreign minister with 3 proposals for Denmark to choose from. The first was a new expanded agreement allowing the U.S. to build various military bases and defensive zones on Greenland, giving the U.S. complete control and freedom of movement within those areas. The second option was an agreement assigning the task of defending Greenland to the U.S. military. The third and final option, which shocked the Danish foreign minister, was selling Greenland to the United States. The U.S. Secretary of State frankly told his Danish counterpart that the last option was their preferred choice. Sell us Greenland. The Danish foreign minister, although shocked, did not immediately reject the idea and informed his American counterpart that he would discuss it with his government. However, about a month later, he told the U.S. ambassador in Denmark, "Yes, we owe the U.S. a lot, but I don't think we owe them so much that we would give them Greenland entirely." Details of these negotiations remained confidential until 1991, when the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten published the story after accessing declassified archival material. At that time, it became known that the Americans had considered offering $100 million in gold to Denmark in exchange for Greenland. The documents do not indicate Denmark's reaction to the American offer, but in the end, the deal did not materialize, and Denmark retained Greenland. Instead, the U.S. and Denmark signed a new agreement in 1951, replacing the 1941 agreement. This new agreement allowed the United States to maintain a military presence on Greenland, and consequently, the U.S. began constructing Thule Air Base in the same year. Today, this base is considered one of the most important U.S. military bases in the world and serves as the headquarters for a significant part of the U.S. missile defense system. It previously played a crucial role in the U.S. defensive and offensive strategy during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The strategic location of Greenland, situated along the path between North America and the Soviet Union, made it a forward base for the U.S. military in countering Soviet threats. At the same time, the relationship between Denmark and Greenland changed starting in 1953. The world's largest island was no longer a Danish colony but became an autonomous region under Denmark, granting its residents the same rights as Danish citizens. In 1979, Greenland's residents gained the right to self-rule following the results of a referendum held that year. This allowed them to manage their affairs independently of Denmark, except for certain matters that remained under the Danish government's control, notably defense and foreign policy. The terms of self-rule improved further in 2009 after a referendum held in Greenland in 2008. As a result, the island's government gained greater control over its affairs, including the ability to manage its substantial natural resources, such as massive quantities of minerals and hydrocarbons. Today, Greenland's population, which numbers about 57,000 people, has the right to self-determination. They have often considered full independence from Denmark, but have not taken that step yet. As of now, the island remains officially under Danish sovereignty. This explains why Trump, when he proposed buying Greenland, addressed Denmark instead of the island directly. The idea was pitched to Trump by someone who claimed to have good relations with the Danes and could help him negotiate the purchase of Greenland from them. It is worth noting an important point here. Trump claimed that the idea of purchasing Greenland was his own. However, this is not true. Someone else planted the idea in his mind. According to the 2022 book The Divider, Trump in the White House by Peter Baker and Susan Glasser, the proposal to buy Greenland surprised White House staff as much as it did Denmark and the rest of the world. In 2018, Trump had a conversation with his national security advisor at the time, John Bolton, saying, "A very smart businessman friend of mine told me we could buy Greenland. What do you think about that?" Trump was referring to his friend, billionaire Ron Lauder, head of the World Jewish Congress. After Trump shared the idea with Bolton, Lauder met with him and confirmed that he was the one who proposed the idea to the president. He even offered to serve as a channel of communication with the Danish government for negotiations on buying Greenland. Bolton, as Trump's national security advisor, was aware of Greenland's strategic importance to the United States. However, he considered the idea of Denmark selling it to be impossible. Despite this, Bolton tried to humor Trump while convincing him that his friend should not play a role in the matter. In late 2018, Bolton asked his assistant, Fiona Hill, to form a small team to study the issue and come up with an idea regarding Greenland that would appease Trump while avoiding a diplomatic crisis with Denmark. After weeks of studies and discussions with the Danish ambassador in Washington, the team concluded that purchasing the island directly from Denmark was not possible. Instead, they recommended the more practical approach of renegotiating the 1951 treaty under better terms. However, Trump and his administration's interest in purchasing Greenland leaked to the press in August 2019 when the Wall Street Journal revealed the story. At the time, Trump confirmed that the idea was being considered. In response, the Danish Prime Minister mocked him, describing the idea as absurd. Since then, the proposal has been dead, and the situation remained as it was until Trump recently reintroduced the idea in December 2024, during the announcement of appointing a new U.S. ambassador to Denmark. In a post on his social media account, Trump stated that the United States believes owning and controlling Greenland is an absolute necessity for national security and freedoms worldwide. No one knows the reason behind Trump's revival of this idea or his plans for executing it, especially given the firm opposition from the other side. Hours after Trump's statements, Greenland's Prime Minister responded, saying, "We are not for sale, and we will never be for sale." Whether Trump can change Greenland's or Denmark's stance on this matter is unlikely. If he somehow manages to convince them, it remains unclear how he would secure the funds for such a transaction. Greenland, with its area exceeding 2 million square kilometers, has no listed price or valuation, as it is not up for sale. However, some estimates suggest its value could reach $1.7 trillion. This brings us to a critical point about Greenland's importance and the factors that make it arguably the most strategically significant island in the world today. To summarize, Greenland's significance can be attributed to two key aspects: geography and natural resources. Geographically, Greenland is the largest landmass in the Arctic, and its location makes it crucial for the major players in the region, especially the United States, Russia, and China. At first glance, some might be surprised to hear China's name and question its connection to the Arctic. The recognized Arctic states are 8: Norway, Sweden, Finland, Russia, the United States, Denmark, Canada, and Iceland. So how does China come into the picture? China considers itself a near-Arctic state, a term it coined in its Arctic strategy published in 2018. This was an attempt by China to associate itself with the region, which is expected to play a significant role in the global economy in the near future. This definition was rejected by the United States, with then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo saying, "How can China consider itself a near-Arctic state when the shortest distance between it and the Arctic is about 900 miles? However, this did not stop China from trying to increase its involvement in the Arctic through cooperation with Russia, its only ally among the Arctic states, or by attempting to establish a foothold in one of the most strategic locations in the Arctic, Greenland. China has made several attempts to invest heavily in Greenland, but the United States has blocked these efforts by pressuring the Danish government, which, in turn, pressured Greenland's government. Despite Greenland achieving a reasonable degree of autonomy, allowing it to enter agreements with China or other countries, the island remains under the influence and control of the Danish government due to its financial dependence on Copenhagen, which subsidizes Greenland's budget annually. For instance, in 2016, the Chinese mining company General Nice Group tried to purchase an abandoned naval base in Greenland that was up for sale. However, U.S. pressure on Denmark led to the deal being blocked. Similarly, in 2018, then U.S. Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis intervened when Greenland's government planned to accept hundreds of millions of dollars in Chinese loans to build 3 airports, with Chinese companies handling the construction. Mattis pressured Denmark to fund the project instead, fearing the loans could become a debt trap, whereby Greenland might default, granting China strategic concessions, such as ports or military bases. Similar to what happened in Sri Lanka, which leased a key port to China for 99 years after defaulting on Chinese loans. So far, the United States has succeeded in preventing China from gaining a foothold in Greenland. However, China is persistent and does not give up easily. It is unlikely to abandon its efforts, especially given its recognition of the increasing importance of the Arctic. This is particularly true as climate change causes ice to melt, opening shorter shipping routes between Asia and Europe or between Europe and North America. This brings us to the second factor making Greenland incredibly important: its natural resources. Estimates suggest that Greenland alone holds approximately 38.5 million tons of rare earth elements, compared to the global total of 120 million tons. This is an immense wealth, invaluable for countries like the United States, which currently relies heavily on China to meet its needs for rare earth elements. Controlling Greenland and harnessing its resources would make the U.S. less dependent on China in this critical sector. Beyond rare earth elements, the Arctic is estimated to contain about 22% of the world's undiscovered oil and gas reserves. These resources will become increasingly accessible over time, making Greenland a strategic treasure coveted by major global powers, particularly the United States. In an interview with Fox News following Trump's recent statements about acquiring Greenland, former U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien said, "President Trump is telling the Danes that if they won't defend Greenland, we will, but we won't do it for free. We're not going to let Denmark sit back and extract minerals, oil, and other resources from Greenland without us being part of it." These remarks lead us to the episode's central question. Trump is known for being unpredictable and defying traditional American political norms. Do you think Trump might resort to a radical move, such as seizing Greenland by force?